Good evening, everyone. I think I know most of you in this room, which is awesome. For those that don't know me, I'm Leah Pierce, and I'm the chairperson for the Compassionate Committee for the Homeless in North Bay. We have a jam-packed evening of some pretty amazing guest speakers, and so we're just going to follow along in the agenda. There will be an opportunity to ask questions after each presentation. I will tell you this, this is being recorded for YouTube. Thank you very much to Trinity for hosting us third year in a row. So if you feel uncomfortable being on YouTube, then just let us know and we'll bring the mic to you, and then you don't have to worry about being on YouTube, unless you want to be. Was there anything else? I think that was essentially it. And we're going to start our evening. So as I had said, this is our third information session. And when we started the Compassionate Committee, we recognized that a lot of people they wanted to help, but they just didn't know how to help people experiencing homelessness. And so we thought it was important to create an environment of knowledge and understanding, because through knowledge and understanding, all the people from No More Tears here from Sturgeon, that's awesome, that comes compassion, and it comes the support that we need to give everybody, in our community, and that love. And so this is why we continue to do this, and it resonates with a lot of frontline organizations because they want to educate people too, because they see it day in and day out. They live it day in and day out. And so I just wanted to highlight who our guest speakers are today, and then I'm going to carry on with the agenda. So we have Tracy Clement from Tracy's Heart and Hands with us, Trevor LeBlanc from Cold Weather Response Program, the Crisis Center in North Bay, and Stuart and Brooke, our outreach peer workers with True Self. Now, I'm trying to keep us on time, so I'm going to ask Fran, one of our committee members, to come forward to give the land acknowledgement. Just watch your step, Fran. Okay. You good? Good.
We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, and within the lands protected by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850, used by members of Nipissing First Nation. We also acknowledge the nearby Anishinaabe communities of Dokis First Nation and Temagami First Nation. We thank them for sharing this land with us. It is our hope that this land acknowledgement also serves to send a broader message to everyone that we are committed to the hard work of building a more inclusive, respectful, and equitable community, and we welcome the relationships we will build on our journey to a better tomorrow.
Thanks, Fran. And now I'd like to call on John, another committee member. He's also my husband, by the way. Yeah, he's like, no. We're going to come to center, and he is going to say the prayer for this evening. Switch my water.
I won't knock over your water. Yeah. Evening, everyone. Sweet gracious Jesus, as we enter into Advent, my heart and mind spend many hours thinking of the homeless. Please give them peace this year as they do their best to get through the holiday season. Remind them of your promises, keep hope in their hearts, and guide us as Christians to meet their needs as best as we can. Let them remember and explain to their children that Christmas is about you, Jesus, and the eternal life we have awaiting us. I pray that organizations like the Compassionate Committee for the Homeless in North Bay rally together to create amazing Christmas events and gatherings for the less fortunate this year. Help me to make a difference in their lives as well. Lead me in my search for how best to be your hands and feet, Jesus. In your gracious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, John. Oh, that's a good reminder. Let's silence our cell phones. Okay, so now it's time for the guest speakers, and I want to call upon Tracy, and you brought a friend with you. Who did you bring with you? Scott Kyle. Okay, so come on up to the mic. While you're making your way, I just want to give you some information about Heart and Hands. It's a mobile outreach volunteer-based program right here in the city of North Bay to assist our unhoused, displaced individuals and linking them with services, giving support, friendship, care packs, clothing, hygiene items, drinks, wellness checks, needed items, helping link to families. And it was created based on Tracy's personal situation within her family. And I am so happy to have both of you here. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for having us. Again, I'm Scott Kyle, and this is Tracy Clement. And Tracy is the lead for Hearts and Hands, and this is something that she has put together, and it's and she's growing her outreach program, and she's very dedicated to what she does. So I'll do the speaking portion here, and then Tracy will interject a little bit later on, and then you can ask her any questions or find out about all the things that she does. Hearts and Hands is a mobile outreach, is a volunteer community-based outreach program. The main focus of the outreach program is to provide support, care, comfort to those in the community that have the misfortune of being unhoused. The unhoused community is mainly made up of those who suffer from mental health issue, drug addiction, and many who simply cannot afford the cost of a decent housing. Hearts and Hands is one of a number of outreach programs in the community, and what I do like the most is that many of these outreach programs work together using social media and texting and many different ways to reach out to our unhoused people that might be in distress. Hearts and Hands has a number. Hearts and Hands was created and administered by Tracy Clement. Tracy has a background certification in child and youth work, social work, and personal support worker. Tracy and her volunteers encompass moral values to do numerous tasks to aid those in need. Those tasks include compassion, support, meals, care packages that include water, snacks, clothing, medical wound packs, blankets, clothing, coats and boots, and direction, and gives direction to what services are available to the unhoused, and much more. The backstory for Tracy's commitment to Hearts and Hands stems from her personal tragedy that affected Tracy and her family. Tracy sadly had a brother that went from having his own family and a job that he maintained long enough to accumulate a pension. Then came drug addiction, loss of family, and then homelessness. Tracy knows all too well the hardships of having a family member addicted to drugs living on the streets, watching his pension money be used for drugs or stolen by other individuals. After several unsuccessful attempts at rehab, Tracy's brother unfortunately passed away just over a year ago due to complications of his lifestyle. Outreach for Tracy includes regular visits to the homeless encampments, wellness checks on individuals who may be medical or emotional or physical distress. Hearts and Hands, Tracy, along with many other community groups, coordinate together in an attempt to respond to sudden crises that require wellness check. A wellness check may consist of unhoused individuals in distress, crying hysterically in a parking lot, ditch or a homeless encampment. Some of these individuals at times are walking in freezing temperatures without boots, shoes, or inadequate clothing for the elements, etc. They attempt to provide comfort, medical aid, direction, food, clothing, and severe cases notify medical or emergency personnel. Outreach is also used to assist families in finding loved ones living on the streets. The coordination amongst the groups is a must, as outreach is not a 9-to-5 venture. It is 24/7, 365 days a year. Social media is a tool most used to alert of unhoused individuals in distress. On Sundays, there's a limited meal sources available to the unhoused. Although the estimate of unhoused individuals in North Bay is in the hundreds, Hearts and Hand tries to use their resources within to provide 30 to 60 hot meals to the unhoused. Sadly, as hungry as some of the unhoused individuals are when they are handed a bowl of hot chili or soup, many use the hot bowl to warm their frozen hands before they consume the meal. Other functions of Hearts and Hands is to provide site cleanup in the encampments or vacated encampments. It is a daunting task, almost impossible to keep up with. With the coordination effort of Clean, Green, and Beautiful, volunteers continue cleaning efforts. In some cases, we find in the encampments are, sorry about that, the garbage in the encampments are due to, in part, to individuals wanting to get rid of garbage, but don't want to make an effort to go to the city dump. They just bring it to the encampments, like examples, an old couch, a chair, and they leave it. And then that becomes somebody else's problem. Hearts and Hands is a supporter of a nexus or a hub, a place where individuals facing homelessness, addiction, and mental health issues will be welcome. It would be ideal if it was a place where they can spend some time, have access to a variety of services on a consistent basis. Hearts and Hands recognizes the efforts its many community partners for their care, compassion, and efforts to provide solutions to the unhoused, mental health, and drug addiction issues. Sadly, it appears as hard as we try to put forth our best efforts, we are only providing Band-Aid solutions. Recently, Northern Ontario mayors endorsed the Solve the Crisis campaign launched by Ontario big city mayors, recognizing this is not just a local issue, but a national pandemic and a humanitarian crisis. The initiative is to get the provincial and federal governments to step up and provide a solution funding and support for the crisis. One of the initiatives is to form a task force to come up with a solution to the crisis. This is something that could be years in the making and or may never come to fruition. What Hearts and Hands would encourage to happen in North Bay is to become a leader in finding a resolve to this crisis by forming its own task force to work on the crisis and promote the findings loudly, passionately, nationally. And I believe that this is more of a federal problem than it is we all know it's different cities, different things going on, but it's more of a federal issue because you go out to Vancouver or you go east, it's there. And I think there's a large chunk of whatever funding we need to do needs to come from the federal government. The provincial government needs to do their part. And then we in the communities, as we have been doing, need to continue to do what we do, but come up with solutions for housing. So in closing, thank you for your time and concern you place on the homeless crisis. And if you have any questions or anything, we're here to, I'll just pass things on to Tracy, and then you can ask us anything you'd like.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us, and thanks for coming out. So everything he said is what I wanted to say, but I also just want to explain that I'm about mobile outreach, so I go all over the city on my own and with some volunteers sometimes. If I get messages, people in crisis, if I can go out and help, I will. Daytime, evening, nighttime. Like he said, there's homelessness doesn't end at 4:30. It's a 24-hour situation. For example, the Sunday night meal that we do could take me an hour to 4 hours, depending on where I'm bringing food or if I'm finding people or if they're tucked in somewhere, if they're not. Homelessness here in North Bay has definitely been on the rise. My situation with my brother was 4 years ago. And I was a family member who got the call that he was being evicted, and I really didn't know what to do. So I did the only thing I knew what to do was to set him up in a campsite with camping gear until I could figure out what we were going to do. But
2 weeks in, I finally found an apartment, which I didn't realize was an actually known drug house, because how would I know that? And I ended up having to evict him, and the journey began, and you name it, it happened out there. He would be found to have to be Narcaned. He, would be in the hospital. He'd talk his way out of it. I went to court to try to get him formed. That didn't happen. As a family member, we didn't know what to do. And eventually, he passed away a year ago, and I decided to continue to do my mobile outreach, because as I was the family member out there, I was getting to know some of the individuals that were on the street. And today I call them my street family. I know them very well, and I form a rapport with them, and we have a good relationship, and I link them to service. Outreach isn't just about giving care packs or clothing, it's about sharing some compassion with them, linking families. I've facilitated phone calls. I've facilitated helping when people have gone missing. You see a bulletin or I get a message about it, and yes, I have seen them out on outreach, so I'm able to assist in that regard. There's a whole bunch of other things that go along with outreach, and I did have a difficult time after my brother passed away, but I felt like I needed to continue, because this was now my street family, and they need all the help they can get, and I'm going to continue to do it. I also affiliate with another group, Boots on the Ground and Lighthouse. Lighthouse goes out every night because he does get a donation from Little Caesars Pizza, so it could take him, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours. And he's like myself, he's mobile, and he goes into encampments, he'll go to doorways, downtown core, wherever. And Boots on the Ground, my affiliation with them has been great, because the first 2 weeks that my brother was homeless, I didn't know what to do, and they were the first group to offer some support and some help. And I became a member of Boots on the Ground, and then I morphed into Hearts and Hands, but I affiliate greatly with them, and we all support each other, because we're all in this together to get the help that individuals need. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, so maybe what we could do, thank you. Yep. So now it's the question period, so not as scary as in Ottawa, but if anybody has any questions for Tracy, if you just want to raise your hand, because Sue, another committee member of ours, will give you the mic, and the reason for that is this is being recorded on YouTube, and our first year we did this, people couldn't hear the question. So that's why we're doing this. We learn, we adapt, so yes. Yep.
Hi, Scott and Tracy, Mark King. I just wanted to thank you for the work that you do in the city. It's actually tremendous, and you help a lot of people. The question I had for you, basically, Scott, was you talked about a task force. Can you actually go a little bit further about how you see that being formed and who should actually be involved in that? Thank you.
Well, like anything that starts, you're going to have to get the experts there, but it's going to have to start small. There's funding that needs to be provided. Who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? We got to find out which pot of money that it's going to come from. I think it needs to come from the federal government. I think that this thing is going to be years in the making. I think, we've had crisis before in Canada. We've had crisis. I went back to like the Second World War, when after the war, we had, things that we had to do. And as a country, we did it. And I mean, I always think about the Pine Tree Line. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but that's all those small radar bases that were built across Canada. They're closed now because we don't need them. But at the time we did, because there was a threat. And we managed to get together as a country. We built all these bases, I think 44 of them. and we manned them for years until the threat was gone. Well, we need to do something like that. We need to get our government, we need to go, and again, there is no more money out there. We got to find that pot of money that exists that can be used, and it'll still meet the requirements of whatever that funding is, but it can be used to put together, a mandate to fix the problem. And we need to cover all the bases, like, mental health. Like, I have a son that's bipolar, and it was a nightmare trying to get him the mental health that he needed. I can't tell you how many times he bounced in and out of the hospital over the age of 18. You're pretty helpless as parents. He grew up as went to high school, played high school hockey, and then when he got older. So we got to resolve all of those issues, and that would be, a community group, and then we'd have to expand as we went. A lot of times people like to tell you no before you even get started. I always think when I get rejection, I just means phase 2 needs to come, because you can't give up on it. But I really think it needs to be organized in our community. Start small, start going out and getting the experts on board, and then build something and maybe present it. Put word out there that it can be done. I know it can be done. We had COVID. We had that crisis after the Second World War. We need our government to get going on this. And maybe we need to give them some direction on where they can go and find what they need.
We have time for another question.
Aha.
Right here.
All right. Hi, Tracy. Oh, wow, that's really loud. Eh? So you've been doing this for quite some time. Have you noticed an increase in the amount of people out there? And in particularly when it's like minus 30 or minus 20. So like if we're looking at the arc from year 1 till now, would you say it's gone up exponentially a little bit? It's gotten better in regards to the amount of homeless that are on the streets?
Most definitely it's increased, drastically increased. And it's been over the last 4 years, especially the last 2 years, and this last year. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons for that. Oh, sorry. I don't like the mic. Yeah, so definitely there's some reasons why we have a lot of more faces on the street, right? Of course, a lot of the individuals that we're seeing in the doorways are the ones that don't fit the criterias for most services, and until the criteria changes, that is not going to change. And definitely peer support needs to happen from beginning to end. Example, somebody decides finally they want to go to detox. They go to detox for 30 days and then they want to continue treatment, but they're released from the program, they have nowhere to go. Well, they're back on the street and chances are they're going to fall back into old habits. So, that's how it goes, right? And sorry, what was the last part of your question?
I guess you noticed it too. Oh, sorry. I guess you noticed it too. Like, as much as a society we try to solve these problems, there is a lot of individuals released from services into the streets, like correctional, hospital.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of them don't fit the average criteria. So I just think that's important to bring up. Thank you very much, Tracy.
And housing too, like obviously they have transitional housing, but a lot of them don't fit the criteria for that, right?
A side question, would you say safely 80% suffer from a mental health issue that is overtaking their, running their life, we'll say? But
mental health and addictions go hand in hand for sure.
I'm just looking at the watch. We have 1 minute. Is there a quick question out there? Okay, so if you have, go ahead, Tracy.
Sorry, one thing, I have
Sure.
1 minute I can share.
Sure.
So for the last couple of years, I've also, I was concerned about medical issues out on the street, and I'm a PSW by career path, and I wanted to have nursing come on board because sometimes it's out of my scope of practice. So we formed a committee, and community paramedics were in that committee. Jeff was in that committee from Boots, a few other people. And it started out, they were just giving me wound kits, so I was able to give that out. But then I've had situations where people are gone septic. We had a fellow lose his leg. lots of things happen. So I don't know, 3 years later, we finally, community paramedics came on board, and I have a contact there that I can set up with the individuals if they need medical aid and it's out of scope of practice. But the problem is time concept. Sometimes that doesn't always work out. So I was like, again, 4:30 it ends. What about the weekend? What about the evening? So we just got a community paramedic that is willing to do outreach on the weekend on Saturdays at First Baptist Church every Saturday. Her name's Molly. She's great. I've met her, and I'm going to help her with that. But so that's like a win, because that's been an ongoing thing, and it's very important for people to have a mental health check with a paramedic, or for whatever reason, right? So it's a step forward. So yeah.
That is great news. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you both for coming tonight. Okay, we have our next guest speaker is Trevor LeBlanc, and he's with the Cold Weather Response Program out of the Crisis Center in North Bay. As he makes his way to the mic, I did a little digging, and the Cold Weather Housing Response Program, run by the Crisis Center North Bay, will be housed out of 590 Chippewa Street West. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Take it away, Trevor.
You had me nervous when you said you did a little digging. I thought, what's coming up here? But I don't have anything prepared on paper. I never do. I do lots of tours. Whole front row here, they were here for a tour a couple hours ago, so they'll get a bit of a refresher. I think the last time I spoke in the church in a microphone was at a funeral, so I'm guessing this will be much easier for me tonight. I actually wanted to start something that Tracy mentioned. She doesn't know this, and it's never really come up before. One of our staff, she's a writer. She actually has a book that she published, and at our Lowberry shelter a couple years ago, she wanted to do a poetry contest. She wanted to run a poetry contest. We ran a poetry contest. We had about 10 entries, and they gave the poems to me to look over them, and they wanted me to judge them. And I mean, I'm not a judging of poetry, but there were some really good ones. There were some that were just written right off the internet or whatever, but there was one poem that like kind of stood out from all of them, and her brother won the poetry contest. Hands down, I actually still have the poem in my office if you want to come and get it someday. I pretty much know the whole thing by heart. I can't read it here, I promise you. The language is very colorful, but it's not surprising, but it's an excellent poem, yeah. So, the Cold Weather Response Program. So, over the summer, with the gathering place not being able to operate the warming center this year, there was a need for someone to run the cold weather program. It's kind of similar to what the warming center ran last year. So, at our Northern Pines site, we have our, if you're not familiar, so where the old OPP station is over on Chippewa. We have quite a large building there. We have 3 different programs in there. Our one program slated to be a transitional housing program. So in the end, we're going to have 3 phases of transitional housing. So basically a starting point, a place for people to move up once they gain some stability and some skills. And then we have apartments upstairs, the 3rd program, for people to have more independence and go on to that next stage of their life and independence, and maybe some units out in the community as well too, right? So that empty building that we have that was slated to open this fall, we decided, and we, working with the DSAB, to open that up as our cold weather response program. So that building has 24 beds in it. We have 24 units, and we get that that's not really enough to kind of respond to the need in the community with the amount of people that we turn away on a nightly basis at the Lowberry shelter. So on top of that, we also have 5 hotel rooms that we've secured at the Night's Inn that we're going to use as to help address that need. So those 5 rooms will have double occupancy. So we're going to work with our staff and the clients that we have, and really look to pair people up. So it won't always necessarily be couples. We'll have singles that'll go into these double occupancy hotels. We'll feed them at the hotel, and then we also have our outreach staff who will provide daily support too, just to make sure things are going good and they don't need anything, and everything's taken care of for them. So out of those 24 that we'll have at the cold weather program, Supports that we're going to provide, so obviously, we have a cook that's going to work out, they're providing meals daily, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, who also will be cooking for the meals at the hotels as well too. Programming, the big thing with what we want to do, and which will get augmented even more once we open up the transitional housing, is to provide that stability for our clientele, right? So as they come in off the streets, they need that initial stability to address all those underlying concerns that they might have. So it does start with housing, and we know housing first works. Once you get a roof over your head, you can start concentrating, focusing on all those other things that you may have sort of put on the back burner. So like simple little things like toothaches or sore teeth or cavities or shoulders or injuries that you might have that you just don't take care of, and they turn into bigger problems down the road, right? So providing that stability and that roof over their head, and then having those services on site. So we've teamed up with community paramedicine, so she has an office right in our clinic space at the cold weather program. And that's where she works out, that's where she's based out of, so not solely just for us, but that's her home base. So she goes out in the community, does her job, but she's also with us 2 or 3 days a week to provide that service to all of our clients. So that's proven to be quite beneficial. So we've been using that for over a year now, and she comes once every 2 weeks. And just that once every 2 weeks was a big help. But now we're going to have that service every 2 or 3 days a week, and maybe even more depending if we need it more. So what that's done for us is we often have to send clients up to the hospital, to the emerge, and if it's not an ambulance call, if it's just sending them up there in a cab or in a bus the next day, once they get up there, it's really hard for them to be taken fairly, be taken seriously, get a fair shake once they're at the hospital, because they look different, they talk different, you're dealing with mental health, you're dealing with addiction, so they don't really get a fair shake when they're up at the hospital. So the other thing that the paramedicine does for us is not only does she can do all that immediate care, that wound care, and look at things, but she can also assess things and make a phone call up to the emergency station, say, I'm sending so-and-so up there, he'll be up there in an hour, and they're going to get looked at properly by a doctor and be taken care of. So it's kind of twofold how that paramedicine has really helped us out. Other services on site that we'll have some mental health services. So we've already teamed up with the ACT team, so they're in our basement. They have it's a little more than just a basement, I shouldn't say it like that. The basement's been re-renovated, they have a whole new office space down there, so they're right on site. So clients that we have, mutual clients, they're right there to see them. It's just a matter of coming across the hall sort of thing. The RAM clinic will come in there, so lots of mental health supports. And in that clinic space too, so there's some offices that aren't really occupied, they're just there, just skeleton offices with desks, things like that, so that ODSP, OW, other agencies can come in and kind of take up that office space for the day and see their clients that we might have there in the program. Because that's the other thing that we've seen, that we can give an appointment card to somebody or say, hey, go see your worker today at 3 o'clock. As soon as they leave site and they walk off, it's all gone. It's all been wiped out of their memory. They forget to go to all those appointments, because again, they're not really focusing on all those little details, because they're surviving. They're out in the street trying to survive and live their life, right? So having those services on site will help to get them to those appointments, to their workers, get that support, get them stabilized, to hopefully start making some changes and getting them into other programs, into other housing, and keep them off the streets, to kind of break that cycle. What am I forgetting? Health and safety, so that's always a huge concern in all of our programs. So my background, so I've been with the Crisis Center for 27 years now. And my first 10 years was spent in youth justice. 15 years maybe spent in youth justice. So I come from a long standing of the safety and security is a big thing. So we take that fairly seriously. We want things to be safe for everybody involved, all the clients, all the staff, and and everybody else that's coming into the program, all the other workers and things like that. And then also our neighboring properties too. So that's something that we keep pretty good tabs on. It's not always easy, being right across the street from a high school and from the Barclay House, and I'm sure you've seen the news and you see some articles and things like that. At the end of the day, I think the staff do a really good job, and and at times there's just some things that you can't prevent, and I don't think it would matter where the location was, you'd run into those things no matter what. And there's a covered bridge just down the street. If the low barrier shelter didn't exist there, Northern Pines didn't exist there, that covered bridge would still be an issue in the winter, it wouldn't matter. And the bushes and the creek, and there's lots of different factors there, and I could go on all day about that, but I'll stick to the program.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Trevor. And I just want to say, you know, you work all day and then you come here and you talk to us, and so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for all our guest speakers. Now it's time for questions. Does anybody have a question for Trevor? Okay, Sue. We're just going to get you the mic.
Thank you. I applaud what you're doing for sure. The one thing that we were talking about earlier was criteria. If we only have space for 25, how do you decide who gets in and who doesn't?
Well, it's pretty much a first come, first serve. It's kind of how we run our low barrier shelter as well too. So when we say low barrier, so that just means that we understand that our clientele, are struggling with addiction, mental health, and other things as well too, right? Some people who have, say, maybe just got out of incarceration and are having a hard time accessing other shelters or other programs. So we don't look at that way. We accept everybody, and it's all based on health and safety. So we do an assessment as soon as they come in, and it is sort of like a first come, first serve. So we don't really decide who comes in. There's no application process. If there's a bed and somebody comes and there's a vacancy, somebody comes, they're admitted. Yeah, and we do know that there will be some turnover because a large part of our clientele is, they are transient. So even though they may get that roof over the head and they get the opportunity to come in and stay there in the program, there will be some people who just up and leave and take off and come back in a couple of days to try and get back in again. But the opportunity will be there to get themselves stabilized.
Thank you so much, Trevor. So the next guest speakers, I call them just Stuart and Brooke. Stuart and Brooke from True Self. So we had Stuart and Brooke come visit us at a committee meeting here at Trinity last year. We were so blown away by both of you. You're gonna make me cry. So, and we keep in touch. Tracy, when you and Scott talk about social media, I mean, that's what we do, right? So there's a need, yeah, we try to fill that need. So I have to say, saving the best for last. So thank you so much, Brooke and Stuart, for coming tonight.
Okay, hello, good evening. I'm Stu. Please bear with me. I'm a little nervous. So when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about tonight, the first thing that came to my mind was the easiest way to help our homeless population is to combat bias and stigma, in my opinion. That's something that I see on a daily basis, whether it's just like systemic or from people like even my close friends and family. Sometimes, they'll get this weird look on their face and they'll say, like, what's it like working with homeless people? What's it like working with people that may have persistent untreated mental illness? They're under the influence of substances. And, my response is always probably a disappointingly boring one. It's a pretty relatively normal experience for me. It brings me up to, the saying, don't judge a book by its covers. When people pick up a book, well, look at the front, maybe read the synopsis on the back, say this, this isn't for me. Like, I think, why not open the book and get to know it? I remember sitting down about a year ago with one of the individuals that I see probably multiple times a week. I have a really good relationship with this man. We sat down for about an hour last year, and he said, Stu, sometimes when I'm walking down Main Street, it's as if I'm parting the Red Sea. You have, mothers crossing the street with their children. You have people turning their backs, bringing their phones out, doing anything they can to avoid eye contact. And, you know what, if that's not one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever heard in my life. So, back, you know, some practical, you know, the whole point of that is these people don't know him. It's stigma and it's biases that they have internally. You know, I do know him. I can assure you he's not a dangerous man. You know, these people aren't dangerous. They're not prone to violence. In fact, they're more likely statistically to be the victim of violent crime than to perpetrate a violent crime. So that was what came up for me, right? It was the bias and the stigma. And some practical ways, Narcan, carry Narcan always. So True Self this year, 2024, has distributed 596 doses of Narcan. Unfortunately, we've had to use it ourselves on many occasions. So that's something that we can offer. If you have a group, a classroom, even your friends and family, if you guys want to know how and when to use Narcan, please give us a call. With the socks, the clothing, we've distributed about 700 t-shirts and sweaters, 313 pairs of socks. You know, we're a nonprofit. We're always in the market for that sort of stuff. As soon as it comes in, it goes right back out. It's almost like we can never satiate that hunger for this, for that sort of stuff. And a common theme that I've heard is the housing. So in 2019, Canada passed the National Housing Strategy Act, which recognized housing as a fundamental human right. I have not seen that acted upon, which is frustrating, right? And sometimes when you're talking about the federal government, it kind of feels like I'm running into a wall, right? Like we're not heard. So all that being said, like, you know, I was thinking about this tonight, and I think you fall into two categories when you're thinking about the homeless population, right? Like you think there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with us as a society, right? And if you think there's something wrong with them, then it's easy to point the finger and say, you know, they need to do something, right? But if you think there's something wrong with us, then you roll up your sleeves and you get busy. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'll let Brooke say a few words.
Thanks, Stu. Yeah, so my name is Brooke. Again, bear with me because I am a little bit nervous. So one thing that I know is that the opposite of addiction is connection. A lot of the time when we're out on the streets, like we're spending time talking to these people, or they're coming into our office, and all they want to do is be able to have a conversation. They just want to feel that connection. They want to be listened to. They want to feel heard. You know, I think a lot of the time, you know, people dehumanize them, right? Like, these are human beings. They have mothers, they are fathers, they're brothers, sisters, cousins. You know, they all have a story behind them. And a lot of the time, I like to listen to what people have to say, right? I like to, you know, learn about them and hear where they come from. I'm also a person that, you know, has been unhoused and on drugs and has been judged and had that stigma. So I know how it feels to be in their shoes, right? And it's really, really tough. It's a hard, hard world when you feel like you're alone. So that's why, you know, like places like True Self and other people here, like our main goal is to be able to try to work together, because we're not, like, I go to work, but I'm not going to work for myself or my coworkers. We're there to work as a team. But our job is to help the people who we serve, right? Which is the people that we're seeing every day. And, you know, like for the outreach team right now, we've got quite a few new people, and, you know, it's really great. We are seeing a lot more people. Like, I see new faces all the time, every day, and it just keeps happening more and more. People are coming here, and then they're staying here, and, you know, they don't know where to go and get support, right? And that's why outreach is so important, because we can find out, like, hey, this person just came from Timmins. They don't know where to go. One gentleman last year, when I first started working at True Self, I remember it was probably around like 8:30 at night, and we were walking down the street, and all I heard was like tapping from boots that didn't fit his feet. And he wasn't from here. He had been in jail in Ottawa and got arrested and transferred. So when he got out, after being in court at the end of the day, he had no idea where to go. He didn't have any food. He didn't have anything, you know, and he was scared. He was terrified. So we sat with him and, you know, we told him about other services, hung out with him for a little bit, chatted, got him a jacket, got him some food, got him water, socks, a brand new pair, not brand new, but a different pair of shoes because his feet, you know, were sore. And, you know, I seen that gentleman go along his journey and be able to go back home and reunite with his family. And the day that he was leaving, I ended up running into him at one of the restaurants downtown, and he was so full of joy, like he was so happy. And most of you know me, like I'm a big hugger, right? And the people that know me out there, they know that too, right? So he just gave me a big hug, and it was just, you know, it's really great. Like, we see a lot of bad things when we do this job, but we also got to remember like the good things that we're doing too, right? We got to remember those people who we do help and those smiles on their face, whether it's a big thing or a little thing or a hug or just to sit on the ground outside, you know, and just have a chat. All those things help, right? All of those things help. And yeah, like I just, I'm very grateful to be here and be a part of True Self. And I just want to, you know, be able to do more and make a big difference within our community. And yeah, so thanks.
Okay, so now the easy part, you get to answer questions. So are there any questions in the audience? Oh my goodness, it gets even easier. You were so good that there are no questions. No.
Hey, so just a two-parter there. What does True Self do? Just because there may be some people who aren't aware. And I ask this question quite a bit to individuals who are tapped in and deal with individuals on the street. Do you ever, if you're being honest, see a time where there would never be bias and stigma? So if you're being honest, and like we're going, you know, like decades back, there's always been stigma and bias against individuals who are on the street, individuals with mental health, and individuals who are homeless. Do you ever see an end to that or an improvement?
So I don't ever see an end to bias or stigma. I think it's at an instinctual level, right? So our ancestors would judge situations. They'd see, you know, saber-toothed tiger and say, maybe that's not a cat that I want to go pet, sort of thing, right? But I think when people have these and when they can become cognizant of it and think about it and critically think about it, then they can act in a different manner, right? I do think that bias and stigma will always exist. I do, to be honest with you. I think that there are ways that we can grow as a society knowing that.
And if I might just say that tonight is an example of how we can grow together. And one of the things that we learned about from our committee and interaction with the community is that people do want to become educated and they do want to help, they just didn't know how. And so having you and Tracy and Trevor here really does help the community sort of stem that, you know, bias or that prejudice. So, any other questions? Scott?
My question is something Brooke said about the gentleman who was released from jail and had nowhere to go, didn't know what he's doing. Is that a common occurrence that you see them released from the hospital, from jails, and just let go?
Yeah.
And you're on your own and good luck to you kind of deal. We see that way too often.
So that is something that happens a lot. Like, I'll be very honest. A lot of the times people get released from custody, and like I myself can say the same thing. You know, I know that they do their best to have programs and stuff, and you know, they're trying to get more and change up the system in the jails. However, it is really hard to get that plan and then let that plan be in place. And sometimes people don't even have that opportunity because they're in and they're out, or they don't even know about that help. And so it is something that happens a lot. And that's why it's very important, like with the jail and other agencies, that we all work together to try to prevent stuff like this, like to do the best that we can do together, so that when people are getting released from custody, they know, like, hey, I can go to True Self, I can go to the AIDS committee, you know, or here, like, there's people that do go to the jail and see people there. I'm one of them. But yeah, just keeping, you know, the organizations together and stuff like that makes it a lot easier, but it's definitely something that happens all the time. And it is, you know, it's sad and it's hard, but that's why we just do the best that we can do in those moments when we do meet people, right? Is connecting them with those services, connecting them with what they need, you know, trying to get what we can. And sometimes it's hard, right? But we just do the best that we can. Yeah.
Excuse me. As an example, that guy from Ottawa that ended up here, would that have been Ottawa that gave him the ticket to get to North Bay, or how would that have happened?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. I know that he was in custody there, and then he got transferred here because I think he had charges in North Bay. So it wouldn't have been a bus ticket. But again, like, no plan in place. Just transferred from one city to the next without talking to anybody, without having, you know, a phone to call or anybody giving any information, right, to him. So he ends up in a city where he doesn't know anybody, or, you know, it's after 4 or 5 and there's, you know, like, nobody out, and he's just walking around downtown, right? And again, like, that's why we do outreach, right? Because we're there at that time to be able to see people. So, hope that answers your question.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Lucky me. So I just want to respond to Scott a little bit too, just to your question about the about release from custody. So in the hospital. So just to kind of help answer too, just so some things that are going on too. So Crisis Center North Bay, we just recently worked on a protocol with the discharge planners and the social workers at the hospital, because we see that as a big issue as well too, at our family shelter and at the low barrier shelter too, like just people being released from the hospital with no place to go. So basically being released into homelessness, which didn't really used to happen, you know, not that long ago. Really since the pandemic, we've seen a real big uptick in all that. So we just worked and completed a protocol with the hospital so that there's some more proactive work being done between the hospital and other organizations to help solve homelessness before they're released from the hospital. So they don't just show up on a Friday at 4:30 at your front doors, hey, here I am. And then we are in the works too, doing the same thing with the North Bay Jail too, because that's, you know, really since the pandemic, that's been a huge issue. Just they're inundated with in the jails, and they get released. And it used to be that the discharge planner, what they would do is, you know, have a plan for them as they're being discharged, but with housing being so hard to find and the cost of living, things like that, it just kind of, I think, sort of kind of gone by the wayside. So we're working with them too to try and help fix some of those things.
Yeah, and you know what, there is a lot of good people at both the hospital and the jail, right, that want to work towards helping people and come up with the same goals, right? It's just, it's so hard with everything that's going on with, like, the housing crisis and everything, right? And trying to, like, get together and then communicate, it can be difficult at times, so.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Brooke, Stu, thank you. And I just want to remind everybody, if you have thought of a question and you want to ask any of our guest speakers, I know that they'll stick around for a few minutes, and I'm sure they would love to talk to you. A year ago, Brian Eade was a guest speaker here with Tanya Healy. And we lost a real advocate in Brian. And so what I want to leave you with is how Brian made me feel. He made me feel valued. And you know what? Every person he met, it didn't matter what your education, she's gonna make me cry, what the education was, how much money you made, if you lived on the street or you didn't, he valued you. So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take all of that that Brian was, and he still is, because if we can take that, Brian lives on, okay? So please value each other, value yourself, because we're all worth it. So that's my gift for you tonight, is to remind you of what Brian was to all of us. I want to thank our guest speakers. I want to thank everybody here for taking the time to maybe shift your thinking a little bit and to learn about what's going on in our wonderful city. I'm also going to shamelessly plug the fact that we are having our winter boot campaign this Saturday. We're taking over Father Larry's parking spot at the Pro Cathedral garages. So come on by between 10 and 2, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and you can drop off hats, mitts, gloves, scarves, socks for sure. We ask that you drop off new items because people experiencing homelessness are worth it. As well, please consider sponsoring boots. This year, for the second time, we are very blessed to be partnered with Souls for Souls Canada, and they have provided us with 51 pairs of brand new Keen boots. Yeah. Woo! So I have to say that we've been around for almost 4 years, and almost everybody in this church, we're on this journey together, and we're a tight-knit organization, a tight-knit group. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.